If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Get ready for the Ochelli effect.
And December 3, 2024, allegedly, according to that thing we call a calendar. This, the Ochelli effect, you listening there. If you're hearing us live, it's just after 8 p.m. on a Tuesday or a Tuesday and all that good stuff. But you are more than likely hearing the podcast because that's what most of you do. Anyway, I've got an interesting little recap regarding Lancer tonight. Who do I have? Well, two ends of the spectrum. I've got Ken Zediker with us, along with his wife, Gabby, Gabrielle Glenn Zediker, okay, depending on how you got the emails and all that. Anyway, husband and wife over there, plus Larry Hancock. So what do we have? The people running Lancer on the ground, and the MC, me, and Larry, who was, attending to people online, running the Facebook group, I think. A few other things were going on there. Oh, and he did a remote presentation as well. So kind of get all ends of the spectrum here regarding Lancer, and you guys don't have to hear too much from me because I already talked about my own personal experiences there, and of course bringing Mrs. O and Frankie along and all that good stuff. It was an odd year. It was an odd sort of year, a little slower and lower than I thought it was going to be as far as attendance and all that, but interesting nonetheless. So let's get into this. First, Gabby, you haven't been on my show yet, have you, live? Or no, wait, you did one a long time ago, right?
It's been a while, yes.
It's been a while, like 3 years ago maybe you did one when we were doing virtual conferences, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That sounds right. And Ken, of course, called in on a Friday night show and then, surprise, had Bob Groden with him. So, Ken, yeah, it's not been as long for you since you've been on. But
yeah, it's only been like a month.
Like a month, right before the conference. So, and of course, Larry, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine. Winter's kind of here and starting to do, get through Thanksgiving haven't got the Christmas decorations up. I hang in there with Thanksgiving as hard as I can.
Oh, yeah. Well, Thanksgiving immediately following the conference, I was like so exhausted still the next week. It was sort of like, oh, yeah, right. That's coming up too. I let Thanksgiving go this time pretty much. It was sort of like, quiet thing. Just the three of us sitting here and, what are you going to do, But anyway, Christmas is coming. We are into December, but an honest recap. So, Larry, what did you think going into the conference, and, how did it look online? I mean, give me some feedback about what you were seeing.
I think, one of the things, and Gabriella will say this as well, we've all been talking, since the 50th. Like, okay, would the 50th be the last conference? Is anybody going to be hanging in with this subject more than 50 years? Okay, and then we got the 60th. Like, oh, wow, okay. So it really is an interesting question about expectations. How many people are really interested? How many people still want to come to Dallas? Mm-hmm. How many? So it's a question mark, much more than it was when I started with Deborah, 30 years ago. But interestingly enough, that the interest has not dropped off nearly as fast as I thought it would. So I did have people contacting me about the conference and, who was speaking and that sort of thing. So right. I knew there was still some interest. But the biggest challenge, I think Gabrielle and Ken will say, one of our biggest challenges every year is speakers. Who's doing what? What do we have new? What is going to interest people? And you can check yourself. What question are you going to ask? What is new after 60 years at this? Has anybody got anything new? Because that's what people are going to want to hear. That's the first thing out of the bag. So
exactly.
I will say that combined with, I was very pleased. Last year we've had a good showing of international people. I had thought, actually, if anything, the international interest might drop off more quickly, but we had people in the Facebook group from Belgium and Germany and New Zealand, and, you know, of course they have to wrestle with time zones. Right. So there was still a good international interest. I'm curious to whether you and Gabby saw that, you know, in the in-person attendees. But for me, my question was, you know, are we going to be able to find something new? And are there still people wanting to come to Dallas? And I guess that's kind of a question for Gabby and Ken and you. What do you see in terms of, what did you see on the tour? I know you did a walking tour. I communicated with people online that very much wanted to get into a walking tour. Walking tour was still a major interest to people I talked with online. Right,
and Matt Douthit actually wound up getting something together and doing a tour of the Tippett site and surrounding areas separate. I go over to the Knoll, and there was actually weirdness going on at the Knoll on Friday. So the people that said they were going to meet up with me, not too many of them made it. There was actually a disruption of the moment of silence, believe it or not. So, I mean, there was a lot of different things going on in Dallas this time. As far as international reach, I mean, I'm going to turn to Gabby on this and Ken, because they know better, like, say, what the international interest was online. I didn't really see it like we did last year in person. I think we had less of an international visitor situation. I think I noted a couple of people from Canada. But outside of that, I didn't see anybody from other countries this time. But I'm willing to bet that in the post-coronavirus age of the Zoom generation here, we definitely had a lot more online people than we thought we were going to have. But Gabby and Ken could tell us a lot more about that. So, Gabby, what about that, though? Did you see more international interest online or what?
Online, we definitely did have a big international presence. We had a lot of viewers from, like Larry said, Belgium. We had a few from Scotland, because we have the whole Dealey Plaza UK group out there. And a lot of them came and viewed it virtually. Mm-hmm. Not as many joined the Facebook group. We had some people who, in my email letting them know about the Facebook group, completely glanced over that fact. So they're slowly being added to the Facebook group still and asking questions and such.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. But last year we definitely had a bigger international presence.
Yeah, I was going to say there was a big Dealey Plaza UK contingent that actually showed up in Dallas last year. But on the 10th anniversaries, and we did notice some patterns this year too, which I want to ask both you and Ken about. We noticed some patterns, not just in the international, but in the general sense, let's say, regarding things that happen. And every 10 years, there is a rise in interest, just like every 25 years, there is a rise in interest, even though we've only had 2 intervals there. You can see it. The media reacts bigger. This year, I don't know, the media didn't react so much big on the 61st anniversary as it did on the 60th. But, what are your thoughts there regarding the patterns we saw? Maybe you could give some people some insight there.
The round years, like 55, 60, 65, the round years are all definitely more attention-grabbing. As with anything, it's always the round years. Anything, even like true crime related, it's the round years that all of a sudden the media is like, hey, this is still happening.
Right.
This is still there. It still hasn't been solved. Yada yada yada.
Whether it's John Bonet or JFK, it doesn't matter as long as there's a true crime aspect to it. It's the big anniversaries, right?
Yep, the big years. They tend to be the best turnout wise, the most interest and all that. We still do get some interest during the off years. Right. But they tend to not be as popular as the round years.
Right. And we may be getting a little bit from the Toddler Peanut Gallery there, who was also present at the conference. I just want to say that's Gabby's own private Toddler Peanut Gallery.
Yes.
Just wanted to let people know that's what that noise was. It wasn't Ken. But Ken and I discussed at the conference, actually, another pattern that we took note of, which doesn't necessarily go with the round anniversary pattern, but something that I think is relevant, because everybody thought this election, right, is the big, this is so warped, this is so weird, this is so big, et cetera, et cetera. But it was an election year, and, well, I don't want to spoil it entirely, Ken, but you took notice of something we talked about at the conference a few times as well.
Yeah, it seems as though every election year, that's our lowest fees. So we noted that pattern, but we're still trying to think of ways how to improve it.
Right, and that's the presidential election cycle that we see in the U.S. It seems to cause, I don't know, reluctance for people to maybe come out for one reason or another. Yeah,
a lot of them is they don't want to spend money until they know how the election is going. Because a lot of them do get fearful. And once they do know how the election is going, because the election happens 2 weeks before the conference usually, roughly 2 to 3 weeks.
Something like that,
and by then the flights increase in price, and it's just not feasible for people to come out in person.
Yeah.
But a lot of them did still attend virtually.
But it's a weird, tough thing, because it's almost like, when people look at Christmas shopping season, right, and it changes people's purchasing habits. Apparently, presidential, and by the way, I checked with a couple of other different kinds of conferences. I didn't tell you guys this yet. There was a financial conference that went on, a crypto conference that went on, and another like deep political sort of small little conference thing that went on around the same time, okay, as the Lancer Conference. And I was in contact with some of these people and finding out, guess what? They experienced the same thing. So it's not a JFK exclusive effect. I don't know if you guys were aware of that.
Chuck, something I would have – oh, sorry, Jabby. Something I would chime in with, though, is a lot of the people that are interested in JFK, and we all know this, tend to be either politically active or politically interested. That politics does have some things to do with JFK. Many people's ideas to who really killed President Kennedy have political ideas of who did it. Mm-hmm. Politics is entangled with it. And I think this year, something I felt myself, and I saw in others, people with that kind of interest literally got burned out by the election. It's kind of like they were so emotionally involved in the election that when the election is over, conference, I just need to rest. I need to chill. I think for the JFK folks, that had something to do with it, with that investment kind of going into the election rather than the conference.
Right. And you know what's weird about that, too, is that, again, it's not a left or right paradigm issue, because in the 30-plus years that I've sort of, I was in the contact circle with Vince Salandri at one point. I was in the group in New York and New Jersey at one point. I've now, been around you guys. So I've mixed in with lots of different people that, believe me, that's a dynamic group of individuals individuals politically. I've seen it go from very, very left-wing sort of people all the way to individuals who you would count as right-wing no matter what time in our recent history it is, okay? So it doesn't matter the time period, how those definitions have shifted. Left and right-wing people, but politically active people are usually interested. Doesn't matter left or right, although we can see trends. And I think there's been more of a trend to the right wing lately, or the libertarian wing as well, lately, but that's happened before. And at one time, you could almost say that everybody there was a lefty. I mean, it just seemed like that's the way it was, which is really weird. But I think you hit the nail on the head, Larry, that it's people that are politically conscious and, engaged in the American politics that are most concerned about this. And they do have political views on it. Obviously, some people think the right wing killed him. It's a communist conspiracy. It's it's a deep state thing. It's, deep politics, not deep state. Correct yourself, apologies to Peter Dale Scott, etc. And it's just about people that are politically focused, have ideas about this, and are concerned with it, which makes sense because we are talking about the assassination of the president, after all. So, yeah, I think that's exactly right, Larry. So, Gabby, any other trends that you noticed for this particular conference, or Ken, either one on the ground that we could share with Larry at this point?
The only other trend I could think of was we did have a lot more from Canada this year.
Yeah.
I want to say one thing. It seems as though Lancer exclusively is getting the younger generation.
Kenneth also noticed that he did also notice that there were a lot more of the younger generation this year.
Well, yeah, we did pick up a few younger individuals that were presenters, and I think people were more interested, and that's a good thing. I think we need to do a lot more to engage with younger people, because I still feel like we're still kind of behind regarding that. But I do see that Lancer made progress with engaging with younger people in their 20s and their teens, etc. And like Alex is great. Alex Harris, I'll mention him first. I mean, the teenager that was there all weekend this time, but he presented again this year. Did a great job with the sync up thing. Which, by the way, Larry, were you able to watch the conference, most of it, or as it was happening, or what?
No, I wasn't, because I was really on the Facebook group. I did watch bits and pieces, and I did watch part of Alex and listen to Alex. Uh-huh. But when I'm on the Facebook page, it's hard for me to pick up and do the online stream at the same time. So okay. That was difficult. But I did listen to parts of them. I listened to most of them, even if I didn't watch them. But of course, I will say the one real challenge for the remote access, at which you and I and Gabrielle, we all fight all the time, is hearing the speaker versus seeing the video projection. So sometimes I will say the remote viewers, the one challenge for them, and part of it depends on what screen size they're using and everything else, is getting as much of, not so much the PowerPoints that are being projected, but the videos that are being projected.
Right.
Those are hard to pick up sometimes. That requires even more contrast. But I did listen to Alex. I love Alex. I love another great thing about Alex, which we miss with some of our older presenters, including me probably, is Alex has this great way of saying, if he doesn't have an answer for a question, he says so. Mm-hmm. Yes. I really haven't studied that. Oh, okay, got it. Where, some people who've been around for decades feel it's incumbent to come up with some kind of an answer. Alex doesn't.
Right. No, I appreciate that. And I think somebody mentioned there should be an award for that during the conference, too, because, it was amazing. We had a couple of presenters that actually gave that honest answer. When they didn't know something, they said, look, I didn't study it. So how do I know? And fair enough. We did have a couple of sound issues, but a lot less this year, Ken. Wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, I know I was actively trying to make sure that things worked out, and also we do know for the future that we've got to come up with a slightly better way to handle the question and answer periods, because that became a little troublesome during the conference. No matter how many times I tried to tell people, I swear this, by the way, I was telling them, look, try to repeat part of the question or put the question in your answer. Do something so that the people at home hear it, and some people got the message, some people didn't. So I know it was a little hit or miss. Yeah, go ahead.
I know even in the Facebook group, Gail Nix Jackson had commented that people needed to realize that you and I were doing our best to remind the speakers that the speakers are just old and couldn't remember to do it.
Thanks, Gail. Yeah, got it.
There you go, Larry. See, you're now in that, and you know you're in that category now, Larry, that if you were there, you would have been one of the old guys that forgot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had to be very careful. It's kind of like I was presenting with David Boylan, who was there in person. It's kind of like, David, it's your responsibility to repeat the questions, because I might not do this. But I will say it's difficult. The presenters engage with the audience.
Right.
They're looking at a face, they're seeing a person, they want to respond. So they're just kind of in a personal engagement with whoever asked the question, and they don't see the people online. They're committed to the people they're talking to, and they want to immediately give them an answer. Okay, don't pause. Just I need to get back to this person, and so it is challenging for the speakers to remember there are people that they're not looking at,
right.
In real time.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and look, it's not the easy. And besides that, until you actually do something, right? Until we actually run the event, you're not going to learn a lot of these things. You know what I mean? It seemed to us that it would be easy to pick up on a lot of the conversations, but then again, somebody's in the way back of the room. And we had one particular questioner, let's say, that had very long preambles to their questions, and it was very difficult for that one to be heard on the microphone, from a distance. And also, I could see the difficulty with repeating that, because if I was standing there and I had to listen to 2 minutes of her go on and then had to repeat it, I would have forgotten what I was answering. So, I understand that too. It's not the easiest thing to juggle. It's not natural conversation, because like you said, you're answering the question, you're engaging with that person right there. And, generally what do you do when the camera's on you? It's best to forget the camera's on you, right? So, because it's like seeing a guy in a movie staring at a camera. Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Oh, sorry. I do want to note that we have now solved both of those issues that you bring up about hearing the audience's questions and the what is it? The PowerPoint.
Right. Oh yeah, the visibility.
Next year, we are planning on doing a split screen, so the people who are watching from home can actually see the actual PowerPoint instead of a projection of it. And our sound person wants to mic the audience. That way, during the Q&A, the people at home can also hear.
Right. And I think there's nothing wrong with if we just get a mic stand, by the way, and stand it up there, Yeah,
I said the exact same thing, but with how many people this year and last year, especially because I was up front last year holding the mic for questions.
Right.
And everybody just kept wanting to spout it instead of go up to the front, and it's like, well, I can't help that.
Well, no, but then it becomes my job to tell them, no, you got to come up here. I'll cut them off on the mic and be louder than them and say, hey, come on up here. You got to do it that way.
but our audio person, Becky, he's wanting to mic up the audience so that way during the Q&A, the people at home can hear what the questions are.
Yeah, we talked about that, and what he would have to do is probably fade that out during most of the time, so you're not picking up background noise in the place. And only bring it up during the mute. He'd have to only bring it up during the Q&A. The background mic would have to be something he'd have to remember. So another entire responsibility to him. So that's what he wants. Okay. Yeah.
But each year we're growing better at it. So.
But as for the videos this year, I am currently working on embedding all the PowerPoint presentations to the videos.
Right.
So that everyone can see what was on the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So that's why it's taking a bit longer to get all the videos up for the download portion.
Oh, right.
Because I'm working on getting those PowerPoints into it.
Right, and if people
re-listening to every presentation.
If people wanted to go ahead and even get the conference now as we speak, they could still go get it, but it's up there in 3 days worth of videos. Like each day is up there as a single video.
Yes.
And what's going to eventually happen is you're going to break it down into presenters here, and each one of the presenters will not only have their original video, but their actual PowerPoint will be up on the screen instead of it being shot through a camera to on screen. So that's what you're doing right now.
That's what I'm working on.
Mm-hmm. And looking forward to that. And
we already have some of them up now.
Okay.
As the individual presentations with their PowerPoints in them. And those who have given us their PowerPoints, we have a few presenters who did not give us a copy of their PowerPoints. So for those people, you're just going to have to watch the screen.
Right, understandable. And also, I did the presentation with Gail. I don't know if we ever quite got to the whole of her video that her daughter did. I know we were trying to, and I don't know if we ever played the whole thing. But either way, yeah. I know you'll be working on that one soon. So that's a work in progress. So if you go to assassinationconference.com and you do decide to purchase the online, eventually they'll be there in individual sets and you'll be able to download them presenter by presenter, probably. Also, I noted that when I first came out, the first couple of minutes there had no sound, so hopefully that'll be fixed too. I don't know if we got it or not.
Correcting.
But there was a little bit, like the whole thing I did at the beginning wasn't there, and then Swanson started talking and there was no sound too. But anyway, look, it was the way it was when it was shot that way, but you guys are able to work with it afterwards so people can get the good files for download. So that's coming up. Larry, did you take any other notes of things that were like kind of comments from people at home, like what they thought of anything in particular? Was there a standout presentation according to people?
I think there were two that people especially, and I think this is congratulations to Gabriella and Ken for the sequencing. The two comments that were really positive comments about, and that bookended the conference, were the opening presentation on JFK and Vietnam versus Cuba. That was one of the best political context presentation that I've ever seen at a conference. That was just an excellent exploration of the which one was most influential on Kennedy at the time, which was most, what was really in play the year of the assassination. And Mike Swanson did just an excellent job presenting that and opening the conference on a very contextual basis rather than diving into details about who shot from where or, this or that evidence. So that was a great opening. Everybody really thought that was. Online thought that was. And then Robert Grodin's closing presentation I've seen Robert present before. I've followed Robert for decades now. Right. And, everybody, not only did they enjoy and comment on it, but I personally wanted to comment to him. It's sort of like, after having gotten all his books and listened to him for so long, I really kind of thought that I had heard everything that Robert had to say, and that I had heard everything there was to say about the Zapruder film. But his presentation on the Zapruder film was awesome. Right. Kind of an insider's view of the history of the Zapruder film, alteration, not alteration. So that was, again, another great bookmark to close the conference. Those two really stood out for everybody. There were good comments about other presentations, but there were also questions. Where did these people, in some cases, they weren't sure where the speaker had gotten certain documents or information. They weren't sure if it was is some of the newer folks are going, is this what everybody says about this subject? Are there other views? So there was dialogue like that, but the comments on the presentation that really stood out were Swanson and Grodin with the opening and closing.
Right. Well, not just because I'm Mike's friend, but I mean, I got to honestly say that was one of the best table setters for a conference, that I've seen in probably since 2003. And it's it was exactly the right place to start. I thought that bit of context, that word comes up a lot between you and me, Larry.
It does. It seems like that. It's one of my favorite words.
It sure is. And you often provide it during my my podcast, so I appreciate that. But I thought that was a great way to open things. And that's another thing that just comes to my mind. Gabby, are we going to see the presentations from the banquet?
Yes, I am working on editing those and getting those up. The audio recorded separate from the video, so it's not matching up. So I'm working on getting that matched up and to upload it to the site as well.
Okay, because we did cover In Memoriam during that part of the conference, and I think it's important, plus the awards and all that. I think all that's very important, and I'd like people to see it for sure, and I think they should. We did have a minor miss, though, because we did not realize that a week before, honestly, and the announcement came to my email late. If I had looked at the email over the weekend, I would have known it. But I think we were all so busy we didn't realize it. Don Thomas has presented at Lancer before, and he, passed. So we didn't note him, not because we missed him, but he's on the top of the list for next year's In Memoriam section, right, Gabby?
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure people knew that because, it almost looks like, did we ignore him? No, we didn't ignore him. Not at all. It was just that it was sort of unknown to us at the time, and there was sort of a late announcement from the family, I think, that was very close to that weekend. I think I might have received the email. I know I got it after I was on the road already. So I wasn't home for the email, and I don't generally go through all my emails if I'm not home. And certainly I had my hands full at the conference, as we all did. So any funny stories or anything that you want to add here, or any standout presentations in either one of your minds, Gabby and Ken?
I know one standout presentation would be the one from the banquet that I hope to get on up, because they had literally just gotten the information like the week before and put together a presentation just like that to show at the banquet. So
yeah, they asked before.
They asked the day before the banquet if they would be able to present, because it was very interesting information, and it's a little insight to their presentation for next year. So
having missed the banquet, what was that about? Now I have a need to know.
I had to build up that desire to know.
You did.
It's about some documents that they had found when they went to the National Archives that were in a box mismarked, and they were supposed to be released with all the other documents and weren't.
Right.
And so they were going over all that information, and I couldn't do it justice. Like, it's one of those that y'all will have to watch when it comes up onto the site. But it was about some documents that were mismarked. They said there was something like 6,000 documents, so they're still going through them to figure out what exactly is in them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some very interesting things can definitely come from it.
So Ken, what a shocker it is that the corporate media didn't report accurately when it said, there's nothing more to be released, really. It just so happens there's a bunch of stuff we know they didn't release, and then there's a bunch of stuff that a couple of guys had to discover in a mismarked box, that they didn't release, and maybe there's more stuff to be released. Ken, what do you think?
Well, I know Robert found 120 negatives of the autopsy that were filed.
Yeah.
So I mean, who knows where half of any of that stuff is?
Well, maybe we're going to need some new terminology. It's not like this stuff was released, but they just didn't give it to us. I mean, it's kind of like the what's in the back room files. The what's we need a different name for. Yeah, somebody released it, but we haven't seen it, and they forgot to show us.
You have to put 2 check marks on it, one for released and one for shared, right? Because some things have been released but not shared.
Unshared.
Unshared. There you go.
So I have a question for both of you.
Uh-oh.
So on Joe Rogan's show, he had President Trump on, and he stated that one of the first things he's doing within the first few months of his second presidency is he's going to release a lot of the Kennedy files. Mm-hmm. Now, certain things like names and addresses might still be hidden, but he wants to get everything out. Do you two trust that will happen?
Larry, before you answer, Larry, I just want to say that Ken just stole my last question, right? That I was going to pass to all of you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay, but you know why? Because this kept coming up at the conference in one-on-one discussions, where a couple of people asked me my opinion about a couple of things, and one of them, the guy was a little mad at me that why is it that they're not nobody's talking about the thing from the Secret Service agent who put the bullet on the stretcher last year, and I said, well, there might be a reason for that. Maybe they don't put a lot of value in it, and that's why you're not hearing about it. And the guy didn't like that answer. But the consistent question that came at me all conference was, don't you think this time, depending on who I'm talking to, either do you trust that Trump's going to do it, or don't you feel better now that Trump is coming back in because he's going to release all this stuff? He's got Bobby Kennedy with him, etc. So, Larry, I'll let you answer it first.
Well, there are 2 or 3 aspects to that question. Yeah. First, he can't just say that simply, okay, everybody release everything. Because that leaves too many. He's going to have to issue a presidential directive.
Oh, wait, Larry, wait a minute. Larry, according to Fox News, he could just imagine that he released them and they're released. I mean, that's what I thought.
That's the sort of problem.
Okay.
That's kind of what I was thinking of. Visualization does not work.
I just thought he could do
concept, but
as part of the what did they used to call that? The secret, right? Positive visualization, and he could just.
That's right.
Sorry, go ahead, Larry. I had to interrupt with that. I apologize.
And then you say, "Well, I did it, didn't I?" It's like, no, you just thought about doing it, but he's going to have to actually, and hopefully, he will have some people that can help him put some specifics to that statement. Yeah, release. It's kind of, we were just joking about it, but release versus shared.
Right.
release means that all of the federal agencies, they don't necessarily have boxes and folders sitting around that say JFK assassination that are still there. There's lots of it's been sent to NARA, so there's two questions. Is NARA going to finally be compelled, regardless of what the agencies say? National Archives, if you've got it, release it, and by the way, with no redactions. And forget about the agency. No, I'm president. They don't get to complain. They don't have any say anymore. If you've got it, release it. That's one thing, okay?
Right.
Release it and release it in a form where we can all see it. They played a trick on us one time with document releases where they released hundreds and thousands of new documents and they just backfiled them in the same folders that were already out there. So you had no way to see what you already had and what was new.
Correct.
So, okay, the first question is NARA itself going to be given the authority to release what they hold, and how are they going to do it? But the third question is, can he write that directive as a national security authorization overriding the agency's own protocols and procedures in terms of what is national security, what is classified? Because, truthfully, that's even from their perspective, they have a legal obligation in terms of classification and security. And they would not be doing their job if they didn't do it. So if you want to see all that stuff, you've got to tell them that all their standard practices have been overridden. And you've got to tell them very specifically, not only, for anything related to JFK assassination, that doesn't play. You've got to give it to the National Archives so they can release it. And by the way, what defines what's a JFK record? The ARB tried to do that with the agencies, and if that's fine. But is Trump going to compel them to look for things that they don't have? And I will say, I said there were three things, so that's the third thing. There really is a fourth. If you wanted to be honest about all of this, as there's a lot of JFK-related material that isn't directly held by the agency. Life magazine has films. Other people have control over information related to, if we're just talking about records releases, that's not going to bring that out.
Right.
We're not going to see the originals of certain films. We're not going to see things that are privately held because there are legal controls over those things that still don't release them. So all I'm trying to do with the statement is saying he may well visualize doing that, but it's going to have to be done in great deal with a lot of oversight, or it won't be any different than what's happened before. Stuff will not get out. Even just issuing a simple statement that says give them all that stuff is not going to do it. Yeah.
True. And here's the thing about it, too. The will he or won't he is only a very small part of the question, because the enforcement arm of getting anything done, that act, the JFK Records Collection Act, was supposed to compel all this stuff to be released, right? Public and private stuff was supposed to be released, but there's no enforcement arm. It's under the executive branch, but there's no enforcement arm. So it's kind of difficult to compel Life magazine or to compel ABC, NBC, CBS, etc. Now, I know there's that lawsuit going on, which, by the way, that's against the Biden administration currently still. But is that going to just simply be transposed to the Trump administration, or what?
Well, since I'm part of that lawsuit, I can speak to that.
There you go.
It's not just against Biden; it's against the Biden and the National Archives.
Yes.
And the court threw out the presidential part, but allowed the National Archives part to proceed.
Right.
So that the claim, one of the claims, is that the National Archives did not fulfill its obligation under the legislation that released the records, because the National Archives, according to the legislation, was given a successor responsibility because the ARB only existed for a certain period of time, but it knew that this problem was going to exist. Mm-hmm. So it said, okay, we're going away after a time, but National Archives, you have the responsibility as our successor to keep collecting this stuff in a proactive fashion. It's like you don't just sit there and wait for a document to show up. You know, you have to go out and try to obtain it. And if somebody tells you about a document that exists, gives you some proof it exists, or any, you know, if you're given notice of something, you have to try to collect it. NARA has not been doing that. So that's part of this whole process, that if it were done correctly, President Trump would have to follow through on what our lawsuit has been claiming and say, NARA, that is your responsibility. No, I know you don't have enough people. You'll never have enough people and resources. It's still your responsibility, but the successor responsibility for NARA to follow the ARB is a big deal.
No, yeah. Fair enough, but it's just that the Biden administration is actually named on the document. So what on the lawsuit. So what I'm saying is, does this transfer over to the Trump administration? Obviously, NARA's NARA, but does it transfer over? I don't know.
And I can tell you it will. Okay. That case is still in court. It will be going on for months because the judge threw out the part relating to Biden and allowed the part. The claims against the National Archives are still legally in play and will be after the presidential succession.
Right, as they should be. But now, for the rest of it, and here's what my answer to the overall question is. I think that we're going to get at best a mixed situation here out of the second Trump administration. People keep pointing to RFK Jr. is in the Trump circle, so he's going to push for it. Well, I don't know that for certain, to be honest with you. Is he going to push for these things? I do not, I've heard things through different grapevines. I've obviously seen him make statements publicly about these things, but we all know that things get politically massaged. So will RFK Jr. be politically massaged into maybe a different attitude about this than what he's shown in the past? I don't know. Will Trump do what he says he's going to do? I don't know. So I throw it open as the sort of, I'm guessing, we're going to get the mixed result that we got in 2017. That would be my overall guess, but I wouldn't put money on any of it because literally, as I said again, I don't know how it's going to turn out. So that's the way I look at it, Ken. I'm a little more skeptical than some people are of Trump. I'm a little more skeptical of RFK Jr. than I ever wanted to be. But nonetheless,
it's
I'm not sure
interesting,
where it's
Chuck. And I just saw this post on a forum. What's amazing is the general public seems to have been convinced by the election campaign that Trump was going to release everything.
Yep.
About everything. It's like total government transparency. We're going to know about what we did with every, we're going to know about Afghanistan. We're going to know about that suddenly we're going to know all the things that the government is. And how they arrived at that conclusion, I don't know. But I can pretty much guarantee that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't foresee them declassifying the stuff from the Lincoln assassination or from Roswell at the same time they decide to drop this. Not going to happen. Okay? But, transparency in Trump, mark me as a skeptic again. Just saying. That's all I'm not saying that you won't get some of what you want out of this, but
only if it has to do with certain people. I suspect transparency will be situational. One of my other favorite words.
There you go. And also we still have the issues over the tax documents and stuff, which I know there was some different legal wrangling regarding that. There's a lot of unanswered questions, I think, Larry. As far as what could be the directives, even if he had a whole, a complete desire for transparency just on the JFK assassination, could he indeed even be capable of releasing everything that people think that he can release? I don't know. Again.
Well, Chad, that's a real good question. I made a post today on my blog about LBJ and DOJ and the CIA and the Garrison investigation. And one of the things we have to accept, this is the reality of the situation. Mm-hmm. President Johnson asked the CIA in 1967, started asking them for all the details about their Castro assassination plots.
Right.
They didn't share them all with them.
Nope.
Yeah. They felt that was a national security issue too. They pushed back. So even if a president wants something, I mean, we all know that a couple of past presidents, like Clinton, have raised the question of JFK records with various agencies and gotten pushback.
That's true.
The agencies have the ability to I don't know if maybe obfuscate is the right word, but we shouldn't think that just because the president says do it, it's all done. That's sure. Unfortunately naive.
Right. And I like how you point out Clinton, because that's the first guy I remember taking, positive action to seek releases, in my lifetime was Clinton. And he had an honest desire for it because just, the political heritage there, and there was some interest then that was, big. And he was all with it. He was with it before, I think, before the, Oliver Stone's movie came out and everything. I think he was still kind of on the idea that he'd like to know, But anyway, yeah, you get mixed results, though, with these guys. And I think that's what we're looking at again. So I promised an hour here, and we're almost through a full hour, believe it or not, answering a couple of questions from each other and giving you guys an idea about what happened at Lancer and offsite. Gabby, is there anything we're leaving out here we should definitely include?
I would like to include that we do still have the videos up for viewing, and we are extending it through till December 31st. So if anyone wants to get a virtual ticket to be able to watch the presentations, or the Virtual Plus to be able to download them, it is still available for purchase on assassinationconference.com. And if they use the code Ochelli10, they are still able to get that 10% off.
Excellent. And I'll include the links with the show notes. So if you're catching this podcast, go ahead and look in the show notes. You'll see a link for assassinationconference.com. And indeed, please do use the code Ochelli10 and collect your 10% off. You might as well. And if they're not already, when you sign up, in their download form so you can get each one, they're on their way to getting there, and they'll be there by December 31st, one way or another. Right, Gabby?
Yes.
Excellent. So with that,
I'd like to give a plug to that also. I know we said it earlier, but quite frankly, if you didn't see Mike's presentation or Grodin's presentation, especially Grodin's videos, which were amazing, I think his wife helped him with those.
Mm-hmm.
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay. So, I mean, this could be worth the cost of the experience by itself. I mean, that's just... Grodin's presentation is not to be missed, and I don't know that it will ever show up anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and much like I said before the conference, I said he's worth the price of admission anyway. So I knew that was going to be the case. But also, Alex was great. We had, a lot of great presentations. Matt Douthit, somebody's microphone just took a dive. But Matt Douthit did a great presentation. We had some interesting thoughts from some people like Jacob Hornberger. Who else would be another diversity kind of mention here, Larry? Who's another one to give them a diverse idea about the people that were there?
There was a lot of diversity. I'm not sure that I'm the one. I did have. This is one thing that did happen, straightforward, diversity-wise. Mm-hmm. Fred Litwin made a presentation regarding Richard Case Nagel, who's been a controversial figure in this forever. I've written about him. Dick Russell was there, and Dick Russell presented on Nagel. It would, for those of you who have never followed that story or might be interested, you'd be very interested to listen to Dick present and then compare it to Fred. If you want diversity, that's brought the maximum diversity. I know that the remote audience was interested in that, and I answered some questions for them in real time with my opinions on that. But that's one that really stands out. If you've ever come across Nagel and you don't know what to think about it, listen to Dick and listen to Fred and draw your own conclusions.
Right.
I also made a blog about that during the conference as well, so it's on my WordPress blog.
There you go, Larry-Hancock.com or the hyphen, whatever, Larry-Hancock.com. You go over there. You can check out all of Larry's work and the blog, and that link will be in the show notes as well. But, that's a great point. I think that, Gail Nix Jackson did her talk about, quite a few interesting things there, starting with the Nix film, and kind of got a little emotional during her discussion. I was on stage with her, and I just tried to help lead the discussion a little bit, and that's all I did there. And and like we said, Swanson's opener was absolutely great. A lot of interesting people there, though. And let me think here. A bunch of the guys from Chokeholds and stuff. Gabby, who else would you mention here?
Let's see. Definitely the guys from Chokeholds. Those were interesting presentations.
Paul Blow was one of those. Jeff Meek.
Yeah. And then we had who else was it? Andrew Lyle.
Right.
He was one who spoke during the banquet.
Right. Jeff Meek, who won an award.
One of Paul's Chokeholds, I thought it was a fantastic point he made during his presentation. Chokeholds, if you all have not heard about it, has to do a lot with the legal issues, the historical issues of why the problems with the official story. What has placed a chokehold on getting the real story out? But Paul was very interested in opening up his. He actually referred to the American Historical Society's Code of Ethics and Code of Practices, and pointed out how the history books and history professors are violating their own practices. And he made a remark, I think he said he called 20-some history professors, asked them what they teach in class about the assassination, and then he read them their code of conduct and asked them if they thought they were following it, and they all said no.
Right. And, also Sarah Jordan Hines did an interesting presentation on Dorothy Kilgallen. We had... let me think here. Joe Borelli, and of course, let me think. Daniel Sheehan. Joe Borelli was there with. Daniel Sheehan was separate, but was there with Bob. Yeah, when they had the Rob Clark thing that he had joined in on, but they had also done the thing with Doug Campbell. And the two of them together was interesting. Bob Nelson had something that was pretty personal to him that was going on there. Will O'Halloran. Casey Quinlan, Andy Keel, I think we mentioned already. I forget. And Janet Groden also presented separately from Bob. Carmine Savastano, there's a video that he had sent in. I think that was played on Sunday. And it was originally scheduled for a different day, but thankfully we were able to shift it and make the schedule work better. Did we get to Brent Holland? I forget if we got to that presentation. Did we?
No, we did not.
Oh, we didn't. But will that be online?
It is online, as well as the documentary that he let us air during the banquet.
Oh, excellent. Right, the documentary piece. That was another thing. See, you guys didn't have to just put up with mine this year. And, of course, David Boylan, who presented with Larry, and Larry was, remote, and David was there. So that was interesting. And Larry mentioned Dick Russell. So I think I got into just about everybody on the list. Pretty much. And if I didn't, then everybody else did. So, with all that having been said, again, you can go to assassinationconference.com and sign up. Use Ochelli 10, get 10% off. And you can still get the conference. And it'll be in a more friendly downloadable version soon, broken down into each presentation. Some of them already done, Gabby said. So some of them are up, but all of them will be up, and you'll be able to get that all the way to December 31st. So go ahead and get the link from the show notes here with the podcast. And with that, guys, I want to thank Gabby and Ken and, of course, Larry Hancock all for joining me tonight. And I want to thank you guys for listening, because after all, I'm really Ochelli, and all of you are the effect.
Ochelli.com.
Go ahead, caller.
Hey, I'm interested in the truth about the JFK assassination.
Right. Well, what do you want to know?
Judy Baker's wild claim, Oswald girlfriend, she knew Ruby and Barry, cancer weapons. Really?
I imagine I could claim I have 4 wheels. It doesn't make me a wagon, but okay.
Oswald was on the kill team and trying to prevent the murder of John Kennedy. Come on now. Has a real expert on the JFK assassination looked into her claim?
Go to Amazon.com, enter Judith Baker in her own words. You'll get the results for a digital copy of a book where Walt Brown utilizes her own words and the known evidence in the case to get at, well, a different perspective, let's say. You can get Judith Barry Baker in her own words from the author himself, signed if you request it, by contacting Dr. Brown at KIASJFK@AOL.com. It's a fun book, and it actually dissects the many, many fantastic claims. Judith Barry Baker in her own words.
Thank you for all the great information.
The War State by Michael Swanson explains the great national transformation that took place and put the Kennedy presidency in the context of the times, and reveals never-before published information about the Cuban Missile Crisis. President Kennedy would not have been assassinated if he had been president 200 years ago. His assassination took place in the context of the Cold War and the rise of the national security state. Before World War II, the United States was a continental republic. In the decade that followed, it became an imperial superpower. Generals such as Curtis LeMay not only wanted to invade Cuba, but knew that there were short-range missiles on the island armed with nuclear warheads that they could not destroy because they were on mobile launchers. Their invasion could have led to a third world war, and they wanted to go to war anyway. The War State by Michael Swanson reveals why and will show you what President Kennedy was up against. For more information, thewarstate.com.
Yo, this is Doug Campbell, host of the Dallas Action Podcast presented by Wall Street Window. And you are listening to the Ochelli Effect, revelation through conversation.
In Denial, Secret Wars with Airstrikes and Tanks by Larry Hancock. Secret wars became a staple of U.S. covert operations and are still happening today. Larry Hancock's book, In Denial, rips the cover off many of them. Using new files, it exposes things about the Bay of Pigs that no one has ever written about before. It shows why it really failed and why the United States did not learn from it. It also shows why other countries today are doing secret operations with more success. This is the book that puts what some want to deny into the light. In Denial, Secret Wars with Airstrikes and Tanks. Larry Hancock. For more information, go to larry-hancock.com. Pick up your copy of In Denial at Amazon.com in digital or physical form.